Okay, I'm recording. I am at home. I've got a dog eating below me, and I've got two sons up trying to figure out what they're going to do for dinner. So you may hear some noise, but hopefully not. Okay, so what we got going on here is this is chapter one of our government accounting. Now, one of the things that I really want to impress upon you is that when you're looking at your regular accounting that we've been doing, financial accounting, managerial accounting, cost accounting, it's all been just your standardized accounting that you see in your day-to-day world, okay? Now, when you look at government accounting or your not-for-profit, some of them, not all of them, but some of them, we have a different purpose. We're not making money in a government. I know people may say, well, it seems like they are, but no, that's not what's happening. Taxpayers are paying their taxes to the government, okay? And the government is then reporting on what did they do with those funds. So that's how I want you guys to think about when you think about this course. Our entire reporting purpose is completely different. Our reporting purpose is to show that we are good custodians of the taxpayer dollars that were given to us to provide certain services that a government is supposed to provide. Okay, so just think about it that way. So here we go. We're going to do chapter one. Yay. So here's the fire department. Now, I did find out, I know Somerton's got a fire department. I don't know if San Luis does. I know Yuma does. I know somebody was wanting to bill somebody recently. I read it in a news article. I know the Foothills, we don't have a fire department. We have rural metro, which is fine with me. They meet my needs. So I'm not too worried about them. But anyhow, normally your fire departments, your police, those first responders are funded by the government. Okay. And the reason why we don't is because the Foothills hasn't established a government. We're just working outside of the county. Okay, obtain an overview of financial reporting for non-business entities, distinguish between private and public sector organizations, identify the sources of authoritative accounting standards for various public and private sector organizations, define 11 fund types used by state and local governments. Yeah, I'm still sick too. It's what happens whenever I want to play with my grandson, I get sick. Governments and not-for-profit organizations hire accountants. Yes, they do. They hire controllers. They hire all kinds of people. They hire budget analysts. They hire just regular bookkeepers. Okay. They engage accountants to perform their audits. External auditors, not internal, external. If you receive in excess of $750,000 of federal funds, you have to perform what's called a single audit every single fiscal year that you receive those excess of $750,000. Okay. This is where my experience comes from. I have been audited more times than I've not been audited. Now, I lean heavier on the not-for-profit than the government side, but still, I've been there, done that, been audited by so many different organizations. It's not even funny. We'll get into that later. As citizens and donors, we wish to better understand how taxes and charitable donations are used. Yes, we sure do. Organizational purposes. Governments exist for the well-being of the citizens. They are providing us public services. This is where we're making sure that we're paying for our first responders, that we're paying for the people that run the government, that we have, the city does the trash and the water. They don't do that out here in the foothills. I'm trying to think what else do we, Parks and Rec, the Civic Center. There's all kinds of different things that the government, can manage. Sometimes some governments manage transportation. Ours does not. However, they do contribute to YCAP. Just things for you to think about. Sources of revenues, usually from taxes and other non-exchange transactions. Mainly from taxes and getting grants from the federal government, allocations from the federal government or the state government. Most of the time, governments are long-lived. They rarely go out of business, even though Detroit did its best to try to go out of business, but it's doing okay now. Back, and I mentioned to this, you guys to this when we talk about IRAs and defined benefit and defined contribution plans. Detroit, because all of the industry left Detroit, and then of course all the jobs leave Detroit, and then all the people leave Detroit, leaves the government in kind of a bind, and so they ended up filing bankruptcy. They're out of bankruptcy now. Okay, relationship with stakeholders. Governments have an obligation to demonstrate accountability for public funds, role of the budget. Governments must be in budget. And now I have two really cute pup dogs I am fostering. And so I've got this red-headed, you need to get out of there. You're trying to get into the candy. I've got a red-headed husky, and I got a pug. The red-headed we adopted, and the pug we're fostering. Even though I don't think we're going to be fostering it for much longer. I think it might just end up becoming part of the family. Okay. Anyhow, it is public law that the budget must be reconciled and in balance every single fiscal year. Whether it does, it's another thing. How accounting must adapt to governments and not-for-profits. You've got to look at the type of the reports. They have different names. I just want you to know that. There's different reconciliations, there's different financial presentations when it comes to government. Like, for example, we have to have two sets of books. One set of books is what we call a modified accrual, which is almost just full accrual, but it's not. There's a couple of differences. And then the other one is a cash basis. And you always heard me say, I don't like cash basis. Well, because of the nature of government, we have these two different sets of books. We have the cash basis because we're getting this money and it may or may not be there in the future. So we have to show what happened this 1 year with this grant, with these funds. And so we do that through a cash basis. And we treat our fixed assets like expenditures, expenses. We don't treat them like, we don't capitalize them. Now, then we have the other set of books, which is the modified accrual, which all your expenses have to be reported in the same time period in which they were incurred. But the revenues, it's a little bit tweakier. There's a couple tweaks in there for the revenues. We do report our fixed assets. We do capitalize those. So you're going to have a set of books to explain what you did for this fiscal year and what you accomplished with these funds, these government funds. And then you have the view of the government as a whole. So you got two sets of books. Okay. It's kind of interesting. I think that's the easiest way to explain it. Federal government FASAB. So we got the FASAB. Okay, well, guess what? That's great and all that neat stuff. FASAB, you're going to follow GASB standards. GASB number 34 is the financial statement presentation. And that's what you're gonna look at. I can't tell you how many times I have gone to these three different websites, the GAO, the US Treasury, and OMB. OMB A87 is the one that just comes right to my head, A122. And then there's a 102 that I needed to pay attention to as well. And so I always had those down. It was kind of like my little policy and procedure book. This is what I needed to do, is I would download those OMB circulars, and they would help me answer questions. For example, OMB A87 deals with the different types of expense accounts that you have when you're working with the government entity. And so I always loved this, because one of the things that you cannot do with federal or state funds is you cannot go out and buy dinner for your employees or do any type of entertainment for your employees. So it's in the OMB circular. It says this is a non-allowable cost. So what do? Okay, you heard it from me. Instead of us calling it entertainment, meals, we call it employee morale. And you can get through it just like that. So, there's always a way. Okay, state and local governments covers basic governments, entities owned or controlled by, and it looks like I've got, give me a sec. Okay, because I'm really lazy today and I don't want to cook. I don't want to cook most of the time because I just don't have time. That was the pizza place calling. They ran out of the sodas my son wanted. So got to answer that. Okay. So we got state and local governments, private not-for-profits, covers not-for-profits. So who covers not-for-profits? Most of the time it's FASB, but then there is some coverage of not-for-profits by GASB. It depends on how that not-for-profit is funded. So determining if it acts more like a government, it's going to fall under the GASB requirements versus FASB. So that's just kind of the rules, what's going on there. Now, just FYI, Arizona Western College is a government entity, and we have to comply with GASB. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, here we go. Here's some literature, GASB statements and interpretations. I don't know why they gave us a category. Okay, if I really wanted to get aggressive with this, and who knows if I do or don't. Okay, there's my Pizza Hut. I know they're working on it. Good people. Okay. You guys have seen me do this already. I go up to the GASB and I go look at things. I can go and I can buy a technical bulletin that'll tell me all the rules and regulations. You're going to really want to focus in on that GASB 34. That's your main reporting concept, how your presentation should look for your government. And I'm gonna be quite honest with you all. The presentation that they have for GASB 34 looks a whole lot different than what you're used to seeing in financial and managerial accounting. You're going to look at it and go, what on earth did they do, and how are they reporting that? And just know that they report it the way they do so they can show the constituents what they did with the taxpayer monies, how it was used, and how the government's budget was created. So just kind of think of it that way. Okay, so this is going to be our GASB. Now, I can go to FASB. In fact, I gotta go check out FASB here in a couple of weeks because they got a seminar that I need to attend. Okay, and so here's FASB. You can go look here and you can find the nonprofit standards. Everything is here for you guys. They don't try to hide anything. Okay. So let's come back over here. I'm going over here, this one. Okay. So the hierarchy. If the accounting treatment for a given transaction is not specified by a statement in category a state and level government should consider whether it is covered by one of the sources identified in category B. Okay, I'm just going to tell you right now that you've got to be watching this stuff closely. It is changing right and left. I was looking at, I think the last thing I saw is they were working on derivatives. They're always working on derivatives, but they're also working on Bitcoin, and they're working on accounts receivable and discussing whether or not they need to do anything different with those. Just some information there. Okay. Okay, other sources. If it's not found in one of those, you can go to, where am I going? Okay. Okay, there we go. Then you can go to other non-authoritative sources for guidance. You're gonna also go to your for government, you're gonna go to your funding source. Your funding source is gonna have all kinds of rules and regulations. And they will direct you exactly where they want you to go and find your guidance at. Okay, so just kind of be aware of that. It's not that difficult. It's pretty easy. Okay. And let's see what else I got in here for you guys. Okay. I keep going through that too fast. Okay, GASB concept statements. I showed you where you saw the concept statements for FASB. Same thing, you can find them for GASB as well. FASB, GASB, International Accounting Standard Boards. We don't normally follow anything from them because they are international and we are not international. Nobody needs to be telling us what to do in our government, by golly. So we don't usually pay attention to that. Okay, so come on, there we go. Concept statements. The concept statements had come out from FASB and GASB. They do, I mean, we're talking, they do a ton of research, like 2 and 3 years worth of research on this stuff. And then they come up with, this is their directive, this is what they think we should all be doing. They are used for guidance only. Codifications, something else that we get to do. Publish comprehensive collection of its implementation guides. The advantage of using codified versions of standards is that all relevant standards for a particular topic are presented together, and any superseded segments of standards have been removed. So you're going to find just the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Okay. They do publish these. It can get a little expensive because they publish them every year, but you can keep one for a while. And then you can sign up to a service where they email you these codifications. Okay, GASB codifications are presented in 2 parts. First, identifies the topic. Second, identifies the paragraph within the codification. Here's the format of our codification references. You can see they have these all nice and numbered, nice and pretty. So anybody can come in here and understand them. Okay, here's the concept statements. And how do GASB's objectives differ from business objectives? Well, I mentioned that already, is the purpose of the government is so much different than the purpose of a for-profit business, even a not-for-profit business. The government, they're receiving their money not from anything that they did, but from the requirement of citizens to pay taxes. And we pay taxes. We pay a lot of taxes. And so it's the government's responsibility to tell us how they spent our money. And they need to show that we're in legal compliance. They need to show the efficiency and effectiveness measures of, other than that, net income. So, and we really don't want the government to make it net income. They shouldn't be. They should be just paying their bills and doing what's, just taking care of the cash needs they have right now. Okay, I've got to put this on pause while I go get my pizza. Okay, so yes, the pizza was good. Okay, I am on number 20, and it's talking about the budget, legal compliance. And so while I was sitting and eating pizza, I decided, while listening to my YouTube, I was gonna go and find, yeah, that one's that. I was gonna go to the city of UMass and find their capper. Okay, so we used to call them comprehensive annual financial reports. Let's see, the CAFR 2020. We stopped calling them that. Now they're annual comprehensive financial reports. I don't know. I don't ask anymore. So I'm going to pull up their CAFR. I'm going to always call it a CAFR. Just know that, just go back and forth with it in your head. Okay. So my main purpose of this, and we get into this in big, big detail later on in the semester. But what I wanted to show you is I wanted to show you their financial statements. Okay, so look at, they got a good note on their CAFR. That's good. Here's the independent auditor's report. You've got to have an independent auditor. So he's just saying, hey, this is what we're doing. I don't know if this is an MDA, management discussion analysis. Come on. Here's their major funds, their special revenues, non-major capital projects. Okay, they got the proprietary funds in there. Okay, I want the purdies, which I guess I should have just looked at it and went straight to it. This is just a standard MDA. There we go. Basic financial statements. Now, in part of this, you're going to see that we're going to use cash basis, and the other part we're going to use modified accrual. So this is a statement of net position. Instead of us calling it like, okay, this is basically the balance sheet. Instead of us calling equity like stockholders or, stock or capital, we're going to call it net position. Okay, there it is right here. This is all of our equity right here. And so we have this statement of net position, statement of equity. Here's our assets. Notice I'm not seeing, okay, capital assets being depreciated. Yep, it's right there. Now, we also have these couple different sections. This is deferred outflows of resources. Okay. This is items we've deferred the outflow. This is deferred inflow right here. So those are two added. Okay. So you can see this is it. Oh, it's nice and neat. Here's our program revenues, our expenses, charges for services. Okay, you can't see this. I wonder if I can make this. I want to make it landscape. Landslide brought me down. Okay, well, I can't. So what happens here is these are all the expenses that are incurred by the government. This is charges for revenues, this is operating grants and contributions, and this is capital grants and contributions. So we're going to find out right up here that the government is going to be working in a deficit. Well, what's the difference? Well, the difference is going to be made by, here's our general revenues, property taxes, sales tax, franchise tax. And this is all to do with our revenue or our taxes. And so you can see right here, what they've done is they're showing you the other sources. So this is just the general, this is the day-to-day of the government. But down here, this is the special taxes, and that's what makes up the difference between our deficit and being having excess. We're not going to use the term net income, net revenue, net loss. We're going to use deficit, excess, and deficit. Okay. So this is the fun financial statements. Okay, I know fun financial statements are fun. Okay. So these right here, these are all on a cash basis. And I know that because there's no long-term assets and there's no long-term liabilities. And then we're going to list the fund balances. You can see those right here. These are all very purposeful in terms of their vocabulary. Okay, just pay attention to those. And so that's one. This is a reconciliation we're going to be doing in a later chapter, and this reconciles the modified accrual basis to the cash basis for those financial statements. So like here's the total fund balances. This is the capital assets. This is our deferred revenues. And they make some other items here, long-term liabilities. They got to add back in or subtract. And then we end up with the net position. So it's just a reconciliation is what it basically is. So I just kind of wanted to point these out so that you guys could look at them and say, oh, okay, these are what I'm talking about in terms of my financial statements. So let's see. This one here is a modified accrual statement of fund net position. And so you can see here, these are enterprise activities. Enterprise is businesses. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's get back over here. Okay. So you can see, I've already showed you. I did not show you because it wasn't an audit. There was an audit, saying they did audit them, but it wasn't an audit statement. In these audit statements, let me see if they have one now because I'm just nosy. I'm being a nosy Nate. And your expenditure, single audit report right here. Okay, in the single audit report, this is the report from the external auditor. And let's see what kind of good stuff they might have in here. I want to see if they've got. Okay, let's go to page 8. This is telling us how they're doing. Okay, this is 6. This here is a listing of all the different funding sources. And then these are the catalog numbers that the federal government gives us. And it's saying, is it a pass-through? Is it a direct? And this is the total amount and what it's for. Okay, that's pretty normal. Financial statements, federal awards. Okay, Homeland Security and COVID. Okay, let's see. So they have a finding. Here's the first one. Misstatement of tax revenue and receivables. It's a material weakness. Okay, misstating receivables. That was the only one. That's not bad. Oh, this is for a previous year. Okay, and that's it. They actually got a really good looking audit there. Okay, short, sweet. I always go to the findings because I want to see what they're up to. Okay. So you guys were able to see all of that neat stuff and see the differences. Okay, so you can see here, government-wide statements, net position. We got statement of activities. And here's the fund basis. Now you're going to see all of this right here. You're going to see these are the ones that have to be modified accrual. These have to be cash, except for, I believe, these ones right here. And so we'll see that in the future. Okay. You can kind of see that. Okay, internal accounting still tends to emphasize individual funds, pools of money. Now, like note, AWC, we have a motor pool where we can borrow vehicles that belong to the college, and the motor pool takes care of them. Actually, it's facilities, but it doesn't matter. You got facilities that takes care of all the buildings. You've got landscaping that goes out and about and takes care of all the buildings. And how are we going to get them paid? Well, we're going to have to find a way to assign them different places. Now the print shop, the print shop basically is going to incur its own expenses. Now it is expected that it will bill the different departments at AWC an amount so that they end up not making any money nor losing any money. Okay. Accrual basis, that's the way we measure something. Okay. Modified accrual current financial position applies to funds financed by taxes and other involuntary contributions. Okay. Revenues are recorded when measurable and available. Outflows are called expenditures. Expenditures are recorded in the fund when a liability is incurred. So I told you, I remember there was a couple different rules here. And this one here is measurable and available. Okay. What is a fund? A fund is basically the way I've always been taught is we call them the color of money. So each fund has its own color, and we don't mix the two funds up together, okay? You just don't do that. You don't take from fund A to give to fund B. You don't do that. You just don't. So each fund basically theoretically has its own set of books. But if you have a really good computerized accounting program like MIP Fund Accounting, Sage software, it pretty much allows you to take care of all that as you're inputting data into your accounting records. That's the program I'm used to using, and I love it, and I think it does the best job possible. Okay. So you can see in accounting is self-balancing set of accounts, segregates resources for specific activities. For example, okay, so here we go. I'll just use this one. Okay, I know that the city of Yuma has money coming in from HUD. They have Housing and Urban Development. They have HACC's, Housing Authority of City of Yuma. They get money from HUD. So they're getting this money in from HUD. The city of Yuma cannot go in and take that money away from HACC and say we need to give it to Parks and Rec or to the fire department, because those funds have been designated from HUD to work on low-income housing. So whatever its purpose is, you've got to maintain that purpose. Now, I've seen people argue about different things. Oh, we went and did this, this, and this, and we gotta spend that money doing this, this, and this instead. And it's like, well, kinda, but no, because you either got a chance to do ABC or not do ABC. You can't go do XYZ with money made to do ABC. It's just not allowed. You're not allowed to take military money and then put it into food stamps. You can't do that. They gotta stay, everybody stays in their lane. Okay. So we have 3 types of different funds. We got a governmental, which is most of your activities. You got proprietary, which is your business type activities for the city of Yuma. That would be your water, sewer, / trash collection, and your Yuma Civic Center. Those are examples of some proprietary funds. Fiduciary types, that's when you have money that has been given to you, or you have something that has been given to you that the government is the custodian of. The government does not own it. They are merely the custodian, and they've got to take care of whatever this asset is. A lot of times it has to do with money. For example, the foundation has a number of endowments. The endowments do not belong to the foundation per se. They belong to the people who made them, and they have a specific requirement. The foundation is merely acting as the custodian and manages those funds. Okay. 5 types of governmental funds. You got permanent funds. They count for and report resources that are restricted to the extent that only earning and not principal may be used for purposes that support the reporting government's programs. So again, I'm going to go back to the foundation. The foundation had permanently restricted or permanent funds. The endowments, the only thing on those endowments that we could touch was the interest earned. Okay. Now you couldn't touch the balance for scholarships, but you could touch the interest earned. Capital projects funds account for and report financial resources that are restricted, committed, or assigned to expenditure for capital outlays. Okay, and then you got debt service funds, and that's to pay off our bonds and our notes payable. Okay. There's special revenue funds. Those are very specific. So let me go ahead and I'll give you an example. My son's babysitter lived off of First Street and Avenue C. Now, back in that house, well, I call it the land of the Chihuahuas because there's Chihuahuas everywhere. But those homes were built with septic systems. So when the city came in, and this was a long time ago, this is about 20 years ago, the city decided that they were going to analyze this and bring everybody up onto the sewer system. Well, what happens is it's not free. The people living there have to pay for it. That's why I'm, some of you may know that I'm kind of paying attention to what's going on in the foothills, because I'm waiting for the city of Yuma to try to annex us. They're at Walmart right now, which is 9E, and so I'm 5 miles out still, but eventually they're going to want to annex us, and they're going to want to put us on their sewer system, and I'm going to have to pay to have my septic system dug up, done all the remedial controls there, and then have the sewer lines brought into my home. So that's a special revenue, because I'm going to get charged on my taxes to pay for that. And that's special. It's not, it can't be used for anything other than repaying for this, putting in sewer. General fund is your basic fund. It's for most of your day-to-day business activity. Okay. 2 proprietary funds. You got an enterprise and internal service fund. So the enterprise, that's your civic center. Your civic center makes money. They have a catering group in there. They rent out those banquet halls for weddings and for Good Morning Yuma, whatever it may be, for other types of meetings. And so they're making some money there. That's my son singing. I don't know what he's singing. And then you have internal service fund. So I mentioned motor pools. I mentioned the print shop. Those are all activities that are done within the government entity that really don't have a way to generate revenue or to have revenue assigned to it, because you're not going to find something that's going to fund the motor pool or the print shop. So you're going to have to find some allocation method, and that's internal service fund. Okay. 4 fiduciary fund types. everything is so fun. It's fun type. Okay, investment trust fund accounts for the external portion of the investment pools governed by a trust agreement, which the sponsoring government acts as a trustee. A pension fund, now those belong to the employees. They're to pay the pensions of public government employees. Private purpose trust funds report all other trust arrangements under which principal and income benefit individuals, private organizations, or other governments. And then you have custodial funds account for all other fiduciary activity. When you don't cash your checks, we have to send your checks to the state. And it's just an unclaimed check. Okay, it's unclaimed revenue. And so I send that up to the state, and those are considered custodial funds. And you know, it might behoove you to go and check that website, just look for unclaimed property and see if you've got any unclaimed property. If you've got a check there that's been sent up to them, you just fill in the paperwork and you go get your money. And so here's the overview. Hello. How many funds are needed? At least one. You don't need one of every fund type. Just use what you need. For building projects, the government might use 4 capital project funds or could choose to combine some. Exact number depends on their judgment. Okay. Importance of the budget and governmental accounting. Again, you have to have a balanced budget. Whoops. There we go. We're always going to be looking at I know, okay, so when I worked for Kokopah, my main grant source was HUD, Housing and Urban Development. In fact, I got really good at it, and they recruited me and asked me to come work for them at their Phoenix office, but I decided not to, because you know me in Phoenix. So anyhow, at the beginning of any fiscal year, I had to submit what's called an Indian housing plan, which is our budget. We say, this is how much money you guys are giving us, and this is what we plan to do to meet these certain needs that we're required to meet from HUD. And so I would do that. Then at the end of the fiscal year, when everything was done, we did our audit. Now, please note that you have to have your audit done within 9 months of the end of your fiscal year, or you're in trouble. You have to ask for an extension and all kinds of stuff. But for the Indian housing plan, as soon as I could get it done, I would get it done, and I would tell them, okay, this is how much money you guys gave us, and this is what we did with your money. And so it was a requirement. I had to do that. And so here's their, again, I'm going to call it a CADFR. It's just their entire financial statements of these governments. They're really interesting because it not only does it get into, the demographics of whatever city, state you're looking at, entity. It tells you some of the things that are happening in the community that you're really not normally seeing. In fact, I think I might even go look at the town that my daughter lives in and see if they do a CAFR, which I don't even know if they do, because they only have like 400 people. They might not even need to do one. Okay, here we go. There's the end of the main content of chapter 1. Aren't we lucky? Whoa! Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop that, and you guys can begin working on your homework. You guys have a good time. Contact me if you need me. You know where I'm at.